So about a week ago I was doing some videoing and I came across a need. I needed some way I could spin something nice and slowly and be able to get some good video of it. Now I didn't want to spend any large amount of money on anything I'd only use once or twice, and I also didn't want anything that was big that was going to be hard to store. So I went ahead and using a Carvey made my very own. So let me show you how we do that.
I started by opening up Easel and went to the fidget spinner app, as this was going to make for a perfect base. I created 4 outcroppings and then played with the settings until I got the wall thickness and the separation to the degree I wanted. Once it was in Easel, I went ahead and removed the extra openings for the bearings I no longer need, as it was going to sit flat on a table. With the base done, I moved on to creating the top. For this, I simply created roughly a 6-inch circle, which would cover up the entire base. I created a second circle to go in the center of the first one. This is going to be for a 5/6-inch dowel rod that will go through to the bottom bearing. Simply to do this, I created a hole that was roughly 5/16 inch and centered it inside the circle, using the tools provided by Easel. I ended up needing to create some feet for the bottom of it to keep the bearing off the table and to allow it to turn smoothly. So I went ahead and created a number of 3/4 inch circles simply by creating a solid master one of the right size and shape. And I just made another 4 copies of this so I could carve them out. I adjusted them, making sure I gave myself enough space between each one so it could easily be carved.
So at this point, with everything ready to go to the Carvey, you would expect to see a montage of the Carvey cutting a bunch of stuff. However, apparently I have no clue how to use a video camera. The record button. I forgot to press it. So we're going to jump ahead to assembly. So, sorry about that.
So with all the pieces cut, I just went ahead and pressed in the escape bearing into the base of it. This takes a little bit of force, and sometimes you have to widen the hole with your X-Acto knife or some sandpaper, but that went pretty well. Since I needed a shaft to go between the bearing and the upper plate, I chose to use a piece of dowel. I got this one at Lowe's. It's 5/16 and fits almost perfectly inside of the bearing center spot. Just requires a little trimming with an X-Acto knife to make it fit perfectly. I went ahead and did this by just shaving off a few pieces at a time and test fitting until it worked. With the dowel ready to fit into the bearing, I went ahead and gave it a good spin, and then I started off by measuring to get an idea of how much to cut off. To do this, I just stacked the 2 pieces together and gave myself an extra 1/8 of an inch for separation between the base and the top. I used a standard coping saw to help cut this off. It was the easiest way to do it. It also works good when you have to work inside of a small space rather than having a power tool. I went ahead and left the dowel in the bearing and used the base to assist in holding the dowel while I cut. After getting the dowel cut, as you can see from the spinning here, I double checked to make sure that the upper plate would work and made any adjustments that needed to be, but in this case it was fine. The bearing had a looser fit than I'd expected, so I went ahead and used a version of super glue to add a little extra bonding help to it. Now when you do this, you have to make sure you don't obstruct the bearing so it continues to spin. Usually I just leave it on top. I'm also going to take the opportunity to add the additional feed at this time, which is just 2-color HDPE. As you can see, the balance on it was a little challenging, but I quickly solved that problem just by propping it up. So I went ahead and put the top plate on and took it for a spin. It was a pretty basic setup, and I made sure that it was working just fine before moving on to the next step. The dowel for the center shaft is a different color than the turntable, so we went ahead and used a black Sharpie just to cover it up. I think it goes a long way to make it easier to deal with, and it adds that extra finish approach. However, I think in the future we'll just put something on top of it, like some foam core board or something, to cover the whole thing up and give a nice view. And here's a little test of a plastic army man spinning around.
Now I know a lot of people are asking why bother building something like this. Well, I needed something like this, is why I built it, which is the reason most people make them. But I like the simplicity of it. I like the fact that it wasn't hard to build. It was easy. It met my needs really quick. Yeah, it's only going to work for lightweight things, but that's what I needed it for. It's also small, so it's easy to store and easy to keep out of the way. And heck, if you ever get really bored, you have the world's greatest fidget spinner. So if you like the video, click like, subscribe if you really want to. If you have questions or comments, leave them below and I'll happily answer them. Have a good night.